Hey there, welcome to another edition of Spice Files. I'm once again joined by my co-host DFB. How are you doing tonight?
Hey, Mike. Good. How are you?
Doing pretty good.
Awesome.
Coming off of a lot of work, I guess, with organizing and stuff, as I'm sure you understand.
It came off brilliantly. Urza's Chalice. If it was possible to exceed the expectations that you guys set last year, you definitely did. From start to finish, you guys crushed it, and I was thrilled to be a part of it.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's really for me at least, and I think I said this last year about Last Chalice as well. It's really about kind of trying to give back to everybody that does a lot of work to make the old school community what it is, right? And so that's always in the back of my mind when I'm like planning stuff and doing work for it. It makes it feel worthwhile to have put in the effort, with that in mind, right? So anyhow. Yeah, it was good to see you in person as well. Play some games.
We had some fun for sure.
Yeah. Today we're going to talk about the spicy decks that were awarded prizes at Chalice. So we've got 4 from Singleton and 4 from the Pacific format old school event that we ran. So we've got some pretty cool stuff to check out today. The Singleton decks are so if you saw the Spice Files where we covered some of the Singleton decks from last year, we kind of just covered the ones that did well. I mean, nobody had really played a whole lot of Singleton up to that point. So it kind of made sense this year to do specific Spice prizes for Singleton now that people have played it a little bit more, so there's kind of, a developing, sort of expected archetypes that you kind of see now. And I think, we tried to pick things that were a little bit outside of those things. So hopefully we've got some good decks to show people.
Yeah, looking forward to digging into these. And fun that we have photos from 2 different main events to share just for one weekend.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look, huh?
Sure. Yeah. So the first one we've got is a deck by Tyler Heters. He's one of the Lords of the Pit. It's a white, green, red Singleton Fatties deck, and I mean, there's a lot of cards in here, I would say, that you kind of expect to see, the usual cards like, Bolt and Wheel, maybe, some of the powerful things. But his choice of creatures is actually, I think, kind of the most interesting part of the deck.
Oh, it's marvelous. That 4th row down is just like
exactly.
It's a feast. Yeah. I especially like. I mean, anytime you can put an Elder Dragon in a deck is very, very exciting. So Palladia Moors, I think is the one that stands out the most to me.
Yeah, and one thing I also like about some of the card choices in here are they're cards that I had built this Reanimator deck for normal old school at one point, and it was reanimating a bunch of kind of random different Legends creatures, right? And some of these are the ones I was trying to reanimate, even though they're not even really in the normal Reanimator card pool. Like Johann's just a cool card, so actually getting him in play is pretty sweet. So I really, really appreciate that. And also Hazazon is actually quite cool in a deck where you're kind of like, you're playing big dudes. You probably have a fair amount of lands out. And
no Moxes or Soul Ring in Beast Singleton, right? So that once you get up to 8 or whatever it is to cast Hazazon, you're going to be doing it almost entirely with lands. It's not like if you kind of cheat Hazazon into play in normal old school, like it doesn't do a whole lot, but you're pretty much guaranteed getting your Sand Warrior value here. I mean, he's got the Mana Dorks, a couple of them to support. He's got what's the I'm trying to like decipher the scribbles next to. Okay, it is a Felwar stone. Yeah, the scribbles next to the Birds of Paradise. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's got a little bit of ramp, but not everything that he's casting. He's really banking on getting to the 5s and 6s and even more in some cases.
Yeah, for sure.
Hazazon's great, of course, with Caracas, which I was excited to see in this list.
Yeah, I'm also noticing the Inferno, which I think is a card that doesn't get played a whole lot either in Singleton or normal old school either.
Yep,
right? But yeah, it's a card you can definitely play here, and your opponents often don't expect that card out of you, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
I also think a lot of people forget that it's an instant.
Inferno's it was just like, is it 7 mana?
It's 7 mana.
Yeah. 7. So okay, 7 mana. Everything takes 6 damage. Instant speed. Marvelous.
Yeah.
Perfection. One other creature choice that I like a lot is Argothian Treefolk. I think the card is very good, close, actually, like bordering on sneaky, close to playable in regular, so-called regular 93-94 formats. Like it doesn't, it's 5 mana, but that 5 toughness is so important. And it doesn't, it doesn't take damage from artifact sources, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Although it is a little funny that the Treefolk doesn't have the same exact abilities as Argothian Pixies, right?
Yeah.
Pixies can't be blocked by artifacts. And Treefolk does not have that rider. I think if it did, we would see it
more often.
Yeah, a bit more often than we do, which is never right now. But.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting that you mentioned the 5 toughness. A lot of other 5 toughness creatures that get played have like a kind of a weird vulnerability to them almost in all cases. Like Shivan Dragon, for example, can get, blue elemental blasted.
Yep.
Right?
Juzam can get bottled.
Right. And this guy just doesn't really have that going on.
Right.
Which is kind of interesting. So he's fairly hard to kill. It's a nice inclusion, I think. One other thing that jumps out to me is Urza's Avenger.
Urza's Avenger. I was hoping you would mention that.
It's an interesting card, and I bet a lot of people had to read what the text on that card is. It doesn't get played a whole lot, right?
Yeah, I didn't know offhand. So it can become a 3/3 and just gain one of those random abilities. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I would. You can do it more than once, right? So you can.
So you could make a 2/2 bending from flying. Okay. Yeah. The
card seems right up your alley. He can have banding.
Super,
I'm surprised you.
Super exciting there. But.
Yeah. I know. I'm just surprised that you haven't played with that card yet because he can have banding.
It costs 6.
Okay.
I do like the kind of like Da Vinci-esque. Almost like a Vitruvian Man reference art by Amy Weber on this one. It's a really, really cool card. It's a cool looking card.
Yeah.
And a cool idea. It's a little overcosted.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a cool deck. I'm sure casting all these giant dudes is a whole lot of fun. And
definitely.
Yeah. So
and one last thing I'll say on this one is I love the Heters has obviously been around the block. And I love seeing all of the Chicago event like prize cards like all over the place, like going back multiple years. And he crammed as many as he could probably into this pile, and it's just a cool thing to see. Like the memories adding up over time in a deck like this.
Yeah, for sure. It's very cool. Yeah, that's sort of the whole point of these things.
Yeah. All right.
Getting these price cards, right? So, all right, cool. Next up, we've got Peter Gentes. His deck was called Spicy Nacho, is how he submitted it.
We'll be the judge of that, Peter.
Yeah, indeed. It's got a lot of interesting card choices in here. The thing that I immediately jumped to is that Gauntlets of Chaos. I'm not quite sure what that, if it combos with something in particular, or if he was just casting some gauntlets and having fun. I'm thinking it's the latter.
I think he's just messing around. I mean, so he can do a couple things. Like he can give you a token, or something. Like he has like, he has dorks and tokens, like Tetravites or like wasps or other like pointless little guys that he can trade for something real.
Yeah, maybe you get your attack in with your Colossus Sardia, and then you can just swap him over because he'll never be able to untap him. Or like a used up trike, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
That. Oh, there's a stone calendar in here.
Sure.
All right.
I mean, stone calendar, if he can get it out, there are so many things that. Oh, it knocks the cost off of like even colored spells, right? It's not just artifacts, so yeah, that's reasonable.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, and I guess the one thing to also mention is all of the artifact creatures in the deck also work really well with the gauntlets, right? Because you can swap an artifact creature for an artifact or a creature, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it just has to have a share a type with it, which is cool. So yeah, it makes sense to kind of be maximizing how many of those artifact guys you're playing.
There's a graveyard shenanigans sub-theme here. He has Jalum Tome. He has Recall, which can bin a card. He has Hell's Caretaker. He has Animate Dead. He has Deep Spawn. Trying to see if there's anything else. Bizarre. He's got Bizarre. So like there is a light kind of reanimation like package to this, which is neat.
Oh, one thing we should mention: he has an All Hallows Eve proxy over here. When he took the photo, he didn't have the card.
Okay, all right.
But that makes sense too with what you're talking about, right? With the graveyard sub theme.
Yeah, that's a good catch. I would not have even looked at that card. Over there on the right.
And also along with the discard outlets, I don't know if you mentioned Jalum Tome.
I did. That was the first card. Yeah.
Oh, the first card. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. I hadn't really thought about that. And then on top of that, you also get Eureka. You've got these in your hand. Maybe you're just gonna.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, this looks like a lot of fun. Actually, I'm scanning the pile actually for Instill Energy because I see the saddlebags and the Colossus, and he isn't green, but there are so many sweet and funky effects in here. It's Instill's kind of a narrow thing to have to put in. I mean, it really only works with the Colossus, I guess the Juggernaut. you can instill back your Juggernaut if you want to block with it.
Yeah.
The birds.
The saddlebags are just better, right? Because it doesn't go on a specific guy.
You don't lose it if you lose your guy. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can also choose to just do a different thing for one turn versus another, right? It's not even if they don't kill your guy, you can choose to untap one thing one turn and a different thing another turn. Right?
And then worst case it's a bear under song, right?
Right, sure.
This is
there's an Aladdin's lamp as well.
Yeah, I wonder if he ever cast or used the lamp at all in the 6 rounds. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say no, but I like seeing it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I hope that he did. That would be it.
Yeah, Pete, if you've got any stories about that lamp, please let us know. All right.
And then one other thing I was going to mention is he does have a Clockwork Beast in here, which was the art that people were drawing during the art class with Drew Tucker. So cool card. I think it's a pretty fairly playable card. Actually, I think people kind of forget about Clockwork Beast as far as the 6-mana artifacts go. So fairly reasonable card.
Yeah, its flying cousin gets a bit more press. But the Beast does it have? Yeah, it's at 4 toughness. It's a little tricky with at 6 mana. But
for sure.
All right.
Okay. Well, next up we have a deck by Paul Fierro. It is entitled Dread Pirate Singleton.
Singleton. Yeah.
I'll let that marinate a little.
He himself is actually in this deck.
Indeed, yes.
Is that a Chronicles Stang?
I believe that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's his likeness.
Yeah, he was dressed pretty close to that for part of the weekend. Actually,
right down to the bird maiden on his shoulder, right?
Yep, exactly. That's that's quite impressive. I don't know that I've seen anything quite like that in a deck before. I have seen some of these cards. Paul was actually in one of the Booze Brews episodes that we did because he visited us one week down here in California. So we actually had him on and went through one of his normal old school decks. So actually, I recognize a couple of the altars that he has because they're in here too. But yeah, some cool choices I think in this deck. Just a lot of cards that don't often show up everywhere. Like he has both living plane and living land, so he's trying to do the living plane thing, and he sort of needs multiple outlets for that, I think. I also one thing I will say is I really do appreciate the altars that he has. There's some really cool ones that he's got. They're not all in this deck, of course, because he can't fit them all in. But like that City of Brass is really sweet. Actually, I'm surprised he has this Sylvan library here. I think he has an altered Sylvan that's really cool too. Maybe he just had it in his other deck for the weekend or something. But
God, Catapult is so cool in living plane. I what I love about Singleton is that like you can do what he's done, which is port a known archetype. Like obviously he's the poster child for living plane decks in regular 93, 94. And you can make it work with all these different a little bit less optimal, but still like very fine substituting effects. And he's really kind of showcased that. And, stuff like Rod of Ruin that just wouldn't make the cut normally. Like it's a perfectly fine, it does a really good Prodigal Sorcerer impression. And so it is with a lot of these things.
I do appreciate that he chose Pirate Ship over Prodigal Sorcerer's in here too. But he does have a pirate ship and to go along with his his photo, his likeness.
Yeah, indeed.
There's a tracker to go along with that plan that we were talking about, right? Where
killing 1/1s with ease. I like the I like the fact that he has Zera. Anytime you can run Zera in a deck is great. Jund is such a sweet color combination, and she is a flying tome.
It's a reasonable card.
Really cool card, and also with I'm scanning for Mazavith. Do you see it?
I don't.
All right, never mind. Forgot I said anything. You can with those creatures with tap abilities like Zera or Gwendolyn, you can you can attack with them under and maze them back and then still use their tap ability. Minor thing to look for, but anyway.
I also see this rocket launcher in here. It makes me recall a conversation I had with someone over Chalice weekend about you basically get two uses out of that card, right? Because you can use it on your opponent's end step and use all your mana, and then it's not going to actually blow up until your next end step because all those the trigger to destroy it happens on the next end step, not the one that you're in. So you actually get it for a whole other turn after that as well. So it's actually pretty sweet. You can pretty much ping equal to the number of lands you have total, right? Essentially over two turns.
Over two turns, so less the mana that it takes to cast the launcher,
right, of course,
right. Hey, the more you know, but that is a funny, unintended thing just based on how they templated.
I'm sure it was not supposed to work that way, but, right? But it's cool in here because you can actually shoot all of their lands, right? It's actually beneficial under living plane, right? So.
Very cool list.
Yeah, super cool list. Next up, we have our first place spicy deck. This is one of my fellow beasts, Elliott David. His deck is titled Paperweights.
He had to recuse himself from the judging and the announcing, I think.
Yeah, he certainly did.
Probably worth it.
Yeah,
this is a Tron deck, huh?
Yeah, it's a Tron deck in the Singleton. Interesting choice to go with. Tons of cool artifacts. I think a lot of these things don't get played particularly often, and it actually gave him a place to actually cast Urza's Chalice.
Literally, yes.
Which I don't know I've ever seen anyone do. So props to him for that. I'm sure he cast it more than once throughout the day. Yeah, I mean, he's got sort of not very many color cards, right? I mean, there's
Can
just
I ask a really stupid question?
sure.
How is he casting blue or white cards? Or what are they doing?
So that's off of his Ring of Maroof.
Oh, that's his wish board.
Yeah, up above is his wish board, right?
Ah, okay, okay.
So
All right.
he's got a Felwar, so like he can technically cast it if his
Gotcha.
opponent has the mana. And I don't see a City of Brass. So surprised he didn't play one city just to be able to cast some of those. But there are ways to cast it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was way beyond my rec. I see he does have a Talaria. He's got a Caracas hiding in there.
Oh, he does, yes.
This is this is a really funny deck.
I also really like the one green card in Titania's Song. Obviously, makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it is basically a song deck that's only allowed to run one song. Man, Urza's Miter. I don't even know what that card does. I'm not going to read the text.
I think you can draw a card anytime that one of your artifacts dies, but I remember the text saying something weird like it can't be going to the graveyard already. I don't know, some weird wording like that. Like you can't have sacrificed it or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of makes sense here, right? Because if anyone kills his stuff, he can draw a card off of it because all of his things are artifacts, right? So you can just draw a few extra cards.
The elephant graveyard just slays me. I think that's really what's kicking it up a notch.
Wait, what?
For me.
So I didn't judge these on the day of the event, right? To choose these. So actually, I didn't know he had an elephant graveyard in there.
Okay,
and
the other thing, maybe the most important thing, I don't know, is that he can, under Song, he can pump like Ivory Tower and Mana Vault with Pendelhaven.
Oh, nice.
Which is exactly where I want to be.
Yeah. Nice.
Right.
Yeah, very, very cool.
I mean, this might be the pinnacle of the form. I don't know.
Yeah, it's quite cool. I hope that he got to actually use Ring of Maroof. I enjoy the errata that we have for that in Singleton. You know, there's normally no sideboards, so it's pretty much you can get any card that you want, even if it is actually banned in Singleton, so long as it's legal in normal old school, right?
Sure, and you can also get a second copy of something already in your deck. You can break the fabric of space time when it comes to Singleton.
That's right.
I mean, my attitude on Ring of Maroof is that like if you can activate that sucker, like more power to you. Just do whatever you want.
Yeah, you could be paying that's 10 total mana plus whatever you're gonna have to pay.
Like if your opponent is like in a situation where they're letting you or they're unable to stop you from activating that sucker, like just go ham.
Yeah. Yeah. He's got some good choices in here and also some funny choices. Like there's a Yawgmoth Demon up in this sideboard. Yeah, just some cool stuff.
Plenty of food.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, very cool. All right. So shall we switch over to the Pacific decks?
Shifting gears. Yeah, I'm gonna take a swig of beer.
So the first. So to be clear, the first event that we had during this weekend was the Singleton event, and then the day after that we had a normal Pacific Old School event. So we've got some decks from that as well. The fourth spiciest, according to the rankings I was given by the judges that determine all this, is Jeff Luse Rasputin's Coffin deck. I also want to mention that he also played this deck in the Derby, and yes. It was, I think he had a good time with it there as well. He was actually one of my opponents.
In the Winter Derby?
In the Winter Derby, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So it's a cool deck, and it's actually surprisingly
it's
powerful.
A great deck. Yeah, no, Rasputin is a good Magic card. I would go so far to say, like, if you like the things that this card can do, like when he gets this thing into play, like I don't know, it's just sneaky impressive. I played against a Rasputin deck, Florian von Bredow, from Germany played Rasputin against me, I think in Sweden a couple of years back, and I was just like, wow, like this thing does it all. Like it pays for itself immediately because you kind of get what you spend on it back, back in mana or whatever you want to do with it, really quick. And then the synergy with Coffin is just insane.
Yeah,
like, Coffin is
sure.
a very, very strong effect.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet actually, and he has, I think, a fairly reasonable sideboard. Additional spirit links, which I am sort of entertained by.
Yeah.
And then along with the Serendipity Freaks, it's so he's got some reasonable stuff that he can also board in, which I think is good too. Because he's very controlling deck, like in the main deck. So sometimes you can't just be on that plan, right? Like if you're actually playing against, like a tuned control list, for normal old school, it's going to be hard to just resolve your Rasputins and your Trikes. Right. Like you need more threats, right?
Right. No, your threats are going to be outnumbered by their answers,
right?
For sure. So you do need a way of shifting the plan a little bit. I do, man. I actually kind of love Spirit Link here. So first of all, it's obviously removal. Like Spirit Link is just so good against Serendipity, which is just kind of everywhere in the format. But also, like, if you are putting it on your own guys, like, say you put it on your own Triskelion, and you can, you're able to kind of protect it. You know that there's no chance that your opponent can remove it. You can put a Triskelion with a Spirit Link into the Coffin. Coffin remembers auras and counters.
Yeah.
So the thing is going to come back with however many counters +3 plus the Spirit Link still on it.
Yeah.
And you're just pinging stuff and gaining life and just having a grand old time.
Yeah, I like having one in the main deck because if you really are in a spot where you can set up that particular combo, then you can tutor for it and grab that, right?
Yep.
But having the extra ones in the board is pretty cool too because, like you said, it's just a good piece of removal. And on top of that, it's also kind of nice because this deck is artifact heavy. So I think it's actually nice to have other targets. Like, I guess where I'm going with this is, there's sort of two schools of thought about what do you do when your opponent has a lot of like artifact removal and you have a fair number of artifacts. Like you can either try and go one direction and that's like, trim down the number of artifacts you have, making the artifact removal less good, or you can go the other way and you can try and just play fully into it. Like you have all the artifacts and you overwhelm the fact that they only have so many copies of their artifact removal, right? And I think that kind of like Spirit Link and boarding that in here actually it lets you overload their disenchants, right? Oh,
their disenchants are spread insanely thin, right? Yeah. No, I love that about Spirit Link. That it's drawing heat from like a card. Really, like you can only have 4 disenchants. That's a super precious effect. Along with the Chaos Orb. I like some of these one-off choices too. Like I like the Hercules. The one Hercules main deck can do so many different things, like spitting back your mana vaults and your Trikes and stuff. There's also a trick where you can coffin something and then Hercules your own coffin back and trap that creature in limbo forever, basically.
Yeah, for sure.
And then for the right matchups, he can bring in 2 more Hercules. Which is fantastic. Yeah, I mean, this is just so well thought out. Kudos to Jeff for really running with this and really it's really taking the time to tune it. And I bet he has a lot of cool stories from the day and from the Derby.
Yeah. Also, I don't know if we mentioned it, but there's a Caracas in here too, which is pretty sweet.
Oh, with the Rasputin, yeah, sure. Yeah. Nothing worse than like, okay, sword's your guy. Nope. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Or just getting, you can just cast him multiple times, right? Does that gain you anything? I guess it doesn't really gain you anything.
I don't think you net mana that way, but
Yeah.
but I'm sure there's some kind of
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, very cool deck, and yeah, there's a lot of just minor little synergies between each of the cards, and I think that's pretty great.
I'm sure Jeff is like screaming at his phone or whatever watching this.
Probably, yeah.
You idiots! You missed like 5 different other synergies that I baked into this.
And one other thing I should say as well is that Taunus's Coffin, it does cool stuff with this guy. It does, with Rasputin and also with Triskelion, but it also just sort of is a removal spell, right?
Oh, it's just removal, yeah.
Yeah, sure. I mean, and that's perfectly fine too. So it's kind of nice that it works that way, right? It gives you extra utility by playing that card as well. So
definitely.
Very cool deck. I like it quite a bit.
Love it.
All right, next up, we have Brian Banalakis. So if I recall the story, he was given this deck without knowing what it was at the beginning of the event.
Yeah, minutes before the first round.
Right.
Will McGran handed him this deck.
Okay.
And I can tell you that this deck was developed by Will and Svante, and very minor input from myself, but some heavier input from I would say the foremost authority on the like O'Brien type school decks in contemporary 93-94. And I'm referring to Konstantin Prishvitsin, who lives in the middle of Russia somewhere, who has he's iterated on these green-black Nethervoid lists for years and years and years, and has brought them to different to multiple noob cons, and they do their own events locally in Russia, and this is really like his school. Maybe even more so than O'Brien's now, because I don't think O'Brien plays a lot of 93-94 these days. But
yeah, I mean, he's been at a few things, I think, but and usually he doesn't have. I don't think he usually has blue in this deck. It's usually just black green, right? Like Juggernauts, Juzams, something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff going on here. One thing that immediately jumps out to me is that all of the cards in the deck actually only cost a single colored mana.
Yes.
Which I think is really important because you're so low on colored sources, right? And you want to make this work. And so that's one thing I think is really cool about just the construction of the deck.
Yeah, what I like about it is that it is using it's using little creatures, it's using elves, it's using pixies. And because it has Nethervoids in it, but it is not a prison deck by any stretch of the imagination. This is a tempo deck.
Yeah.
You're dropping a couple threats. In Urnum, you're looking to cast on turn. I mean, ideally by turn 2.
You could,
yeah. And then just slam the door, with the Nethervoid, with that thing in play. That's kind of what you're doing, and you're in the meantime you're blowing up their first mocks, you're stripping their first land, and just like capitalizing on that window to try and go and win the game while they're struggling with their development.
Yeah.
That's the entire strategy. So there's a lot that goes into it. I think to your point about the blue cards, obviously the Ancestral Unlock are a slam dunk.
Oh yeah, they're amazing.
But the side blasts, do just give you a little bit more closing ability that green and black don't have.
Yeah. One other thing that kind of speaks to me a little bit, I actually really like the card Paralyze. I think it's not played quite enough, and this is pretty much the perfect home for that type of card.
This is really, really it. Exactly. Because you're already taxing, taxing their mana,
right?
And they're just not going to be able to untap their guy.
Yeah. And one thing I'm also thinking of is some time ago I was, kind of working on building an ATOG deck, and one thing that I played around with for a little while is actually playing a Nether Void in that deck. Because you are technically on a Vice plan, in some way, right? And you're also on like the Anka Mishra plan. So by playing Nether Void, you're kind of forcing them to play more lands. So it's and they wanna play lands so they can cast spells. So it's another card that puts them in that weird
damned if you do kind of situation.
Right, exactly. And so I had thought about that, and so I've tried it in there, but I think here it's just such a better fit because of things like Crumble, for example, right? I mean, in the ATOG deck, you might try and shatter a Mox, right? But Crumble's just infinitely better when the thing you're trying to blow up are Moxes, right?
Yes,
it's just
totally.
Just way better. So I don't know, the deck feels like it's in a cool place, and it's an archetype that we don't really get to see very often, and it honestly it looks like a blast to play, and looks pretty well tuned, well thought out, and it's pretty great.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are changes that Mano himself would have liked to make after piloting the thing kind of sight unseen over the course of the day, but it's just got a lot of cool things going, and it's an archetype that you just don't see very often. Not because it's not effective. I think it's just because of the sticker shock, on the price of Nether Voids, and the fact that Nether Void really only, slides into this type of this type of deck. Yeah. So it's not a part of every old school player's brewing arsenal. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, I'm sure he was surprised to get this handed to him.
Yeah, for sure.
But at least it worked out in some way. I mean, I don't recall what his actual record was, but he
went 3 and 3.
Spicy prize. Yeah, that's pretty reasonable. I mean,
no, it's reasonable. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, very cool. Next up is Adam Mercado Weiss. I also feel obligated to say that I think he played something similar to this in the Derby also.
Yes.
And it's a cool deck. I think maybe he made some changes because there was so Chalice was like the last weekend of the second batch of the Derby, right? So it was so he may have some changes in here compared to what he played before. But,
right, sure. He could have used the Derby to tweak whatever a couple cards for Chalice for sure.
But it's really cool, and I love that this is actually a deck where you can play Angelic Voices. I think that card doesn't get played very much, and it's actually quite cool. It doesn't have the downside of pumping up your opponent's guys.
Right.
It's just your stuff.
It is just for your stuff. Yeah.
So
it pumps your factories, which is just crazy.
Yeah.
So this is a White Abyss deck. It is just built around the fact that you have the protection from black knights. You've got some artifact creatures, and artifact creatures that are like Scimitars are pretty hard to deal with unless outside of shatters and stuff. You can't burn a Scimitar. If you get a Voices down, it's like a 2/6 flyer, which blocks freaking everything, and if it's unopposed, it just has a nice kind of evasive clock.
Yeah.
He's got. So let's see. The top line is a sideboard.
I'm pretty sure that's a sideboard.
Is that right? Okay, yeah, that's interesting. I'm a little distracted by. Is that an Amnesia with like a natural selection, like
bird drone on it?
Bird head guy.
Yeah, I think so.
That's really cool.
It is really cool. Yeah. Then that Mana Drain Altar is pretty sweet too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
got some sweet stuff.
Yeah, it's some sweet stuff in the sideboard also.
And Abyss is just such a haymaker, right? It's Abyss just. If you're playing like a normal fair creature deck, Abyss just feels it's just demoralizing to see on the other side.
It feels unfair, right?
Yeah, no, it feels really, 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 really fair, or unfair if you're the guy on like whatever rug, right?
Yeah.
And so you'll win a lot of game ones, I imagine, just from having three main deck Abyss.
Yeah.
And again, like back to what you were saying about taxing the disenchants, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to disenchant the Juggernaut that's like coming at you for 5 a turn?
Yeah.
Are you going to disenchant the these abysses?
Yeah, that he probably maybe hasn't even played yet, right? Like
Right.
that's the tough part about it is you've got immediate answer, or you have immediate threats that you need to answer, and
Right.
then there's stuff that you in your head go, I really need to kill that, and that's part of the whole dynamic. And
Exactly.
yeah, I really like trying to fully play into it. I think that's actually the better strategy.
Yeah, no, I
trying
think
to
so
just
too.
pair it back or whatever. Because then if you pair it back, then what happens is like, well, if it's artifact and enchantments that we're talking about, then what happens is just every time you activate a factory, it dies. Because they just have the thing to kill it.
Right, because they always have it because you only have a couple, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So yeah, it's pretty cool. One other thing I want to point out, I'm sure he's very proud of this card, but he has a very blurry printed eye for an eye up there in his sideboard.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, it's I know he has a bunch of those cards where like if you look at them, they're hard to look at. Like they I don't know, they're like, I mean, for me at least, when I look at them, they like bother my eyes because
Sure, no, it feels like something that's wrong with you mechanically.
Yeah, exactly, right. Yeah, it's like I don't have my glasses on. It's like, what the heck? And I've seen a few of those, not just from him. Some other people have some too. I think there's someone from Beast has an energy flux that's that way, and it's like it's just hard to look at. Like you just don't want to look at it. It's just like, get that out of here.
Yeah, right,
It's I appreciate them though because they're actually quite hard to find, right? I mean, it's a weird printing error.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's got a lot of funky stuff. I'm looking at the Lotus with the Japanese text altered onto it, and like the plains down there. That's not actually a plains. It's a forest. Signed by Rush, even though it's a Myfr's art. I don't know. There's a lot of. He's got a lot of. He collects a lot of different like misprints and foreign language stuff and like funky altars and cool things.
So that is really cool though. If you look at it, I never really paid close enough attention to that particular misprint, the forest that looks like a plains, but it is attributed to Christopher
Rush.
Yeah, that's really cool. I didn't realize
because it's probably taking the template from one of the Rush. What are the Rocks Forest or something that was done by
exactly. Rush. Yeah, makes sense. Also, since we mentioned the blurry card above, I think this JM Day tome is also printed in the same way.
Yeah, something's definitely.
The picture is very clear, so this is a very good photo.
Right.
So yeah, it's not just the photo.
Yeah,
right?
you can't tell. Like, is it the printing or is it the potato camera? But obviously, there's nothing else wrong with the picture. So.
Right. Exactly.
Well, very cool deck. It looks like a lot of fun to play. And again, the kind of thing where you just get people with Abyss, especially in game one, and run them over with Knights. Cool deck.
All right. So next up, we have this guy named Dave Ruthbard.
Should I recuse myself here? Should I leave the room?
Yeah. So this is a Curse Enchantress deck. Very cool. I know you've worked on Enchantress decks quite a bit, actually. So I mean, I'll let you take it away. You can explain.
Yeah. I mean, I was really blown away to to get the honor first of all, and just the response from people who saw this deck in action. Actually, this is really the first constructed deck that I wanted to build for 93-94 upon discovering the format. So I've been working on Green Black Enchantress since 2015. But this is the first event that I've ever played it in because like it's the kind of thing where the deck was so terrible in 2015. Like I didn't even I was brand new to the format. I didn't have bayous. Like I didn't have like any of the things that I needed.
Sure.
And I also didn't know how Magic worked or how I was basically coming back to the game like 2014, 2015. So what I did was like but Enchantress is just the kind of card that sucks you in, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like just the promise of an engine, and like, oh, if I build around you, I'll be rewarded in a very obvious way. Like it is just like the siren's call that that brewers can't ignore is Enchantress, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I tried it. I had no idea what I was doing. It failed miserably, obviously. I mean, my original deck, like in 2015, had, I don't know, Howl from Beyonds to go on the Birds of Paradise, or like Cockatrice, or other just kind of random things. Didn't know what was going on. But every, like, I don't know, every year and a half, I would come back to this and say, all right, what else have I learned about, you know, the format, about the cards, that I can apply? And so it took like 3 or 4 iterations of that to get here. And basically where I landed, first I made it a rule to not cut the enchantresses. Because I was sort of in this bug enchantress space for NoobCon a couple of years ago. But I think the enchantresses came out. And I was left with a cool, like a really funky, like enchantment driven pile that used Skull of Orm, and did different things. But I was like, no, okay, we're gonna keep the enchantresses no matter what happens. The enchantresses have to stay.
Sure.
So what does that do for you? You need enchantment density, obviously. And the floor for enchantments, I think with this one is 18. I think it's got 18 main deck enchantments.
Okay, that's good.
The other thing that and the thing that I wanted with the enchantments was I wanted enchantments that do things that either affect the board or threaten my opponent in some way. So you have enchantments that affect the board, like Weakness is basically removal. It's also cheap to cast, which is nice with Enchantress. You have Blights because all of your interaction is enchantment based. And if all of your interaction is enchantment based, you can't deal with Factory. Like this deck was just losing to Factory because you don't have Crumble, right? You don't have any swords or burn or anything. So you all of those Blights, and actually the 5th Blight is the Evil Presence. Those are all there to deal with Mishra's Factory.
Sure.
And then it has ways of threatening the opponent. You know, Underworld Dreams, Warp Artifact, Haunting Wind. Like these are cards that actually are damaging the opponent and will kill them over time if they don't deal with them. And then it also has some additional creature removal with the Demonic Torments. And then out of the board, you've got Oubliettes and more Torments, depending upon what creatures you're seeing, right? Like you want a Demonic Torment, a Serendib Efreet. You don't want to Oubliette it because you want them to take the damage from the Dib. But a creature with a mean activated ability, like I don't know, a Prodigal Sorcerer or a Tracker or something. You want to Oubliette that because you don't they can use it under a Torment. So so what else is going on here? Okay, so the enchantresses, people kill enchantresses when they see them. That's a big problem. So I decided I would run a bunch of mana dorks because people also really like to bolt the bird as soon as they see it. So first of all, the deck has really steep green, and black requirements. But so you kind of need the dorks to help you with that. But the dorks also are drawing fire from the enchantresses early.
It's similar to the disenchant conversation we were having, right?
Exactly. And then if we have a bunch of dorks, I think I ended up with 9 main deck dorks plus the enchantresses. We've got a bunch of like do nothing tiny little creatures around. The Fallen Angels at the top end are there, just to kind of mop up if you need to, get some value out of the fact that you're playing enchantresses that are just kind of sitting around. And I actually did have a match where John Sexton from the SoCal Deep Spawners was kind enough to have a Concordant Crossroads in play. So I slammed down the Fallen Angel and attacked for like 13 and killed him in one of the games.
That's pretty crazy.
That was pretty fun. So one last thing I'll say about this deck. It was a joy to play. Like I was, killing people with either Fallen Angel or the Underworld Dreams combo with the draw 7s. Deck obviously has a very, very hard time with Nevinyrral's Disc. just ruins your entire day, right?
Sure,
You've
yeah.
got a bunch of permanents, dorks and like distressy type enchantments. Um, and so the sideboard plan against that is bringing in that entire third row of the sideboard cards, all
Sure.
the crumbles, and the Gate to Phyrexia.
Yeah.
So your crumbles all have to kind of match up with and be saved for the discs.
Sure.
In the theory behind Gate to Phyrexia, not a very good card. I think it's basically unplayable generally. But if it is going to have a home in the format, it's in a deck exactly like this.
Yeah, sure.
Where you have a bunch of mana dorks sitting around. You're scared to death of Nevinyrral's Disc. The huge drawback with Gate to Phyrexia is that, of course, you can only activate it during your upkeep. Like, you can't just sack a creature to destroy an artifact. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Like at will. You have to wait until your upkeep. So Gate to Phyrexia really can only be used effectively to kill artifacts that have summoning sickness.
Right.
And Disc falls into that category. Disc can't be used the turn that it comes into play. So you actually do get an entire, turn to deal with the Disc.
Yeah.
So Gate actually is perfect in that situation. Gate sort of prevents your opponent from casting Nevinyrral's Disc as long as you have a dork or two in play.
Right. Yeah. That's pretty sweet.
Which is just great. So that was the theory there. I did bring it in because I of course round one of the entire tournament I run into frickin' Troll Disco. It's like my absolute nightmare matchup. Obviously didn't win the match, but got a chance to at least board the card in and give it a try.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I think Gate to Phyrexia is it's a niche sideboard card, but I definitely think there's times where I thought to myself, this card could be, or maybe it should be in this sideboard, like maybe just one copy or whatever, kind of like you've got here. But it should be here because it is fairly reasonable. It gives you like an extra answer that you often don't get in certain colors, right? It's really hard to kill an artifact as a black deck, like a base black deck, right?
Yeah, exactly.
One other thing that I was kind of thinking about that is slightly tangential. So, I was playing my like Urza's anti deck, and it had a lot of gaseous forms in it. And one thing that I ended up having to do was make sure that I chose to play those on the creatures that didn't have flying, because I knew I had to like get through the flying creature later in the game, and try to answer the flyers with other stuff. So I feel like you kind of have that going on a little bit because you have the option of Torment and Oubliette, right? So you can try and like. You have to do the best you can in the moment, but you can try and play the torments on things that aren't going to just be an infinite blocker for your angel.
Yeah, exactly. You really, you gotta think through how your removal, how your answers match up with their threats and like approach that. If you do get the choice, I mean, you always have to play to your outs, right? And I don't know, in this deck, like piloting this deck was really rewarding. I wanted to keep it together, so I can do more with it. But it does, like, playing something funky and offbeat, just like it shows you all these weird interactions and just makes you think in a way that you don't get to see if you're just playing a straight ahead aggro deck or like stock control or something. So I mean, one last thing I'll say is like weakness is really, really good. Just like unironically, I want to use weakness more just in general. I mean, because if you think about what it does to some of the like the most common creatures you see in the format, like it kills Savannah Lions. Serendipity, it turns Serendipity into a 1/3 that pings its owner every turn, which is marvelous.
Yeah, it's almost better than like paralyzing it or
definitely. Yeah, I think it is. I think it is. It's an answer to Hypnotic Spectre because the hippie can still attack, but if the hippie doesn't damage you, you're not losing a card.
Yeah, that's cool.
So I mean, like there are a bunch of other examples. Like weakness is a card, and I think if I have one takeaway from that I can actually apply to more like tier whatever 1 or 2 decks, it's that weakness should be getting some consideration.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's kind of neat to go through either building decks for the sake of spiciness or for building decks in like sort of the other weird formats that we may play from time to time. And then just like learning things about cards that you wouldn't have learned otherwise because you may just not play them, right?
No, exactly.
I think I've personally done that a lot brewing for Singleton.
Singleton does that for sure.
But really any of these things, like we're gonna try out in February, we're gonna try out like a Type 1.5 sort of a thing for old school.
Oh yeah, Toppins.
Cool.
And
we're gonna give it a try. We haven't really played it at all.
Or 4-ofs, right? In the
exactly,
1.5.
Yeah, it's
that's very
just
cool.
A banned list or 4-ofs, and we're just gonna see how it goes. It's just something we decided to try out, and I'm pretty excited to brew in that, and I'm sure that there's going to be cards that there's obviously good cards that are good, and we know that they're good, and we'll play those, but there's going to be a fair amount of extra space in those decks for stuff that you just may not otherwise have to play. Especially, I feel like what I'll probably see there is like interesting creatures that you may not play otherwise because you're trying to fill in gaps. Because you actually have to play more of a curve. You don't have moxes to kind of freebie ramp you as you play the game, right? You have to like consider that a little bit more than I think sometimes people really do when they build a more traditional old school deck. So,
yeah.
So anyway, so stuff like that. I think from a deck building perspective, it really does get you to appreciate cards that you may otherwise never appreciate. So. One other thing I see in your deck photo here is your wonderful Ord patch. Congratulations on that.
It is very wonderful. I've got it right here. I need to get it onto the sash.
Sure.
Before my next big tournament, which is probably Montreal in March.
Awesome.
I got it the Friday night because I wanted to make sure that if I somehow screwed up Friday night, I would have Saturday night and Sunday night.
For
to try and
redo, right? Yeah.
To try again. This is for my money like one of the most amazing pieces of swag in the format and in the community. The Chicago guys are the OGs, obviously. So was thrilled to win this, and when I was taking the deck photos, I guess Saturday morning, I couldn't help but sneak it in there.
Gotcha. Yeah, pretty sweet. I guess the only other thing I'll say is I just wanted to thank kind of everybody that came to the event. I mean, the event was amazing, and a lot of it is just getting to see all these people all in one place, and like I said earlier, they're people that we really appreciate the work that they put into the community, and and also all of the guys that helped to organize the event with me, part of the Beast, just all those guys did a great job. Everyone had just great things to say about all the various things. We take it as a group, and we kind of divvy up the tasks to various people, and so everyone kind of has their own thing to take care of. And I think everybody did a pretty spot on job for the most part. And I'm just thankful that I have a group of people like that, that I get to play Magic with and organize these things with. It's pretty awesome, actually.
No, I mean, none of us can say enough. I mean, it was a world-class event from start to finish. I was thrilled to be a part of it.
Thanks.
It's annoying that's in mid-January because it's a highlight of the year, and there's like 11 more months to go where we might not do better than that. So, but in 100% seriousness, it was a joy. It was something that I was looking forward to for months on end, and we'll be looking forward to the next one, very, very keenly.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you. We all appreciate that. I assume I speak for everyone in the group when I say that. So thanks for going through this with me. We got to end on a high note of your own deck.
Thanks for letting me just like kind of go off on my own private deck tech. Just kind of hijack the show. But
exactly. Well, you let me do it the other time with the Singleton deck, so I figured I'd return the favor. Yeah. Thanks for joining me. This was fun, and we'll do it again soon.
We'll see you next time.
All right. See ya.